Hi guys, how are we doing?
Yeah, good. Are we going to invite community members to the stage?
It's actually open access, so everybody's got full it's
Man, this is
open conversation. Yeah, I love it.
maybe we'll let me just transition to the other side. Get ourselves, you won't get the reflection from the yeah, we won't get the reflection from the TV.
Um,
Um,
yeah, we previously had it scheduled on Discord on a stage, but then we thought, you know what, like it's better just to have a proper conversation about it. So a Zoom call's familiar, everybody can jump on, switch the mics off and speak. So yeah, that's the way we wanted to do it. But Andre, nice to have you. I'm not sure who's on the
yeah,
iPhone. Maybe throw in a name because we can have a real conversation. That'd be cool.
I think I've
But
seen some of your work. I do remember, I do vaguely remember. I kind of recognize this icon ever so.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Good to have you.
we're gonna put webcam here. Daniel's
Trying to set up quite a
it is a very low field of view, isn't it? We're doing this on the, let's see if we can get it. We might just use the Apple webcam, man. Yeah, this sucks. We're going back to that webcam.
on your computer.
Yeah.
Andre, what do you design? I'm not sure I've seen your work yet.
Oh, I'm trying to get the mic sound to come up of my headphones. It's coming from the computer. It's very annoying. I work with video games.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, cool. I need to check it out.
Yeah, I don't post much on the forum. I just throw ideas.
No, very cool. But I should also say we are actually recording this because we want to share it back with the community as well, so everybody can hear firsthand, people that can't make it on the day. But yeah, I think people will just kind of float in as we go through the session. I can see actually Deho joining here. I'm going to admit them as they come. But yeah, I mean, the goal here today is there's been some of you might have had a bit of communication coming out around how we're changing our free product, and we just want to keep an open dialogue with our community and be really upfront. I mean, I think Shay, Daniel, will talk about the early days of Gravity Sketch, and before a line of code was built, those guys were out speaking to community members. So we want to continue that ethos and yeah, like get your thoughts, get your opinions, open it out to you guys for questions. So this is really an opportunity to ask any questions about the upcoming changes, what they are, what you have heard, what you have not heard. So just feel free to just keep a very open dialogue about things. But why don't we start just first from an intros round? I think Shay and Daniel, if you could just share your background, who you are, your role in the company, that would be useful as a good start.
Yeah, sure. I'm Shay Sasanya, co-founder and CEO. My history with this particular problem that we aim to solve with the product was I worked as an industrial designer, and I did a lot of design for manufacturing. Spent a good chunk of time in various companies, from furniture to consumer electronics to finally transportation and automotive. And the biggest pain that we always faced in the design journey was like how to concisely communicate what the design proposition was to people that need to actually bring it to life. And of course, if you do 3D, you can get it a little bit further, but doing 3D from a computer screen, especially on things that have such intricate and compound curves and surfaces, it never comes out right the first time. So you need to go through lots of iterations. And yeah, I guess my day-to-day role is everything from helping with some of the customer deals that we have going on and some of their concerns and questions to the product level things, like we're working on a new layers management system to, yeah, just making sure that the health of the team and the community are intact. That's what I'm here today for.
Yeah, I'm Daniel. I'm one of the co-founders of Gravity Sketch. I think I'm going by distinguished engineer at the moment, although I think at this point I might be workshopping that title. I joined the journey almost 9 years ago now, as like the first engineer or person who wrote code in the company, back in the very early sort of iPad era, like the original iPad era of the company. Shout out to anyone who used that product.
Love that.
And I've been on the journey ever since, I guess. My main role has always been around the tech and the product of Gravity Sketch. How do we turn the vision into reality, or how do we build new features and solve problems and things that kind of level up the product. My skills are mostly focused around the real-time sort of Unity side stuff. I always imagined I'd perhaps be a game developer, but these days this is perhaps even way better. I don't know. I haven't been a game developer yet. This is essentially my first job, and so it's been a pretty wild ride to get this far already. We built Gravity Sketch up out of the community, and it's something that has a very fond place in my heart, and I think it's something that's extremely important to success of our kind of growth and people's understanding of what we're building and helping us move things forward. And yeah, it actually kind of feels bad that we haven't done an AMA maybe ever before, because realistically, we want to be open and accessible and talk to people about what we're trying to do and how we think about problems and this kind of thing. So I'm kind of excited.
Nice. And yeah, to echo my role is community lead, so I can be the go-to person for you guys, and I want to be conversing a lot more with you guys as we continue to develop the product. But to speak to Daniel's point there, it's also the opportunity for me to try and host a few more AMAs as we go through the year 2, which is something that we've been talking about. I think something that you guys would really love, and we want to build a closer, tighter connection between the product and the community. So that's ultimately what my role is. But yeah, today we're talking about some of the changes in the upcoming product. So I would throw it back over to yourself, Shay, in a moment to kind of talk about what those changes are. But I do want to encourage everybody to throw out questions either as we go through, like just verbally, take your mic off and speak. We've got a small group here, so that's totally cool. And then additionally, I think I shared, and I'll resend it's a slide where you can add your questions to. That will become like the prompt. If there's kind of no questions coming in, that's what I'll jump in and ask those questions. But yeah, Shay, do you want to start with a top level introduction as to why we're here and what changes are happening, the background behind that, and the journey to date?
Sure. Yeah. So I don't know if some of you guys are early adopters, but yeah, shout out to early adopters. Yeah, that's where I noticed your icon. 100. Shout out to early adopters. $30, honestly, that saved our asses way back in the day. Really helped us understand that we are generating value. People were willing to pay for the thing. And so the big change for us, going from the days of like these artificial kind of, I guess, pricing models that we had, they're real, but they're just kind of like in our heads. It was like, what do we price for that? How do we price this thing? To going free was a huge jump because, we needed to have some sort of like confirmation that like what we were doing was right and like people would be able to pay for it. Then we went free, and going free was like, well, we really don't want to restrict anyone from accessing the platform, and we think that the technology is growing big enough. And when we made that shift, we already had a few really critical like kind of I guess restrictions in place or in mind, and some of the things that obviously went into the product, some things we actually just forgot to do, like especially when we went from like a free product to a free product with collaboration. Like, if I'm completely honest, we just forgot to put in the limitation of how many rooms you could be invited to. And what ended up happening is like, we make money through businesses, not through individuals, right? Through like big companies that are using the product to generate products that they then go on and sell and help them like expedite their workflow. But we started to shoot ourselves in the foot. Like, our biggest competition is our free product, or it's people just don't want to use this because they want to stay stuck in their old ways, which is fine. We'll capture that community later with like our product and other products that build in the space. But when someone really loves our product and they're like, wait, the free product gives me everything that your enterprise product is giving me, why would I move to enterprise? And we're talking about like super big names. I won't I won't call it anyone on this call, but like companies that like are doing, you know, multi-billions every year. And so the first thing was like, how do we rectify this? Because like we simply just kind of threw something together for our free product and without putting the proper controls in place. And then, you know, the other bit is how do we also preserve this use case that we're getting from the community where they're getting tons of value out of these functionality, and we're not looking at actually trying to monetize that space. And then the other function, and I've been discouraged to talk about this internally, but I don't think I should hold back too much, is like as we scale and the community scales, we actually, you know, to provide the services that we do with Collab and with our cloud exporting, you know, that becomes a bit of a burden for us because more and more people are using these servers that we are, you'll come up with the right word here, but the compute that we have going on to process all this stuff that, you know, either it runs really slow, so it affects everyone, or as we scale, it just like, it takes us much more energy to support and continue to maintain. And so how do we spread that usage out a little bit so that we can still provide the level of free product that we want to without, you know, the maintenance and all of the investment that needs to go into it from our side. So these are like, it's a good problem in my opinion. Like we've grown as a business. Now we're at a point where like, this is a bit challenging. What we don't want to do and what we are trying to stay as committed as possible is anything that breaks your creative workflow, we will never add restrictions to. So if we go back in time, and you remember we put restrictions on number of layers. Like that was the stupidest thing we could have done. And like we completely went 180 on that, and we brought, you know, infinite layers back. We also had restriction on file formats, which we felt was like a little bit too much challenging on the community because they might be using one file format, another file format, depending on what industry. So you almost kind of weight yourself towards certain industries by what file format you're using. And so those are the things that we're trying to like really balance and make sure that we preserve those. And me personally, the things that really take a lot of investment from our side to maintain as we scale are the things that we're going to need to put some sort of restrictions on in order to continue to provide a free product. I don't know if there's anything you'd add to that, but
I have a question. Are you guys planning to allow to export to FBX in the device? Because exporting to FBX would really, like if there is a limit on the amount of FBX files I can export, it will limit me a lot because I use like Gravity Sketch to sketch a design, and then I send it to a sculpting app like Codon or Shape Labs where I can actually like sculpt it, and I can only do through FBX. So I only use the platform more like to like write notes for myself on the other app, and that would limit me a lot.
Yeah, and I love this use case. I really would love to dive into that at some point. I would say for individuals like you, especially early adopters, we're not going to put the restrictions on immediately. So like that's something that we need to go deeper. So like you won't be impacted on day one, or for I guess the next foreseeable few months or so, or even a few quarters. We'll iterate on this to get it right. But yeah, that's a super good one. Like you won't be impacted by it, but like yeah, if you're using this to like take notes, and that's like the key vehicle to moving into your next downstream tool as an individual, we want to continue to support that workflow. Maybe when we do start getting into that space, like we probably need to think about it, but especially with early adopters, there's only a finite number of those. We know exactly how many there are, so it's easier to like understand the investment that's needed to continue to support that use case.
Might be worth just taking a moment actually to talk about who or the approach towards who might be affected in the kind of immediate term, and then going forward, what's the approach there?
I mean, the biggest thing for us is to really capture business use cases, and a lot of businesses are using our product, and they're obviously not business customers of ours, and so like those use cases are disproportionately causing us to invest in those users versus like the individual users like yourself, right? And that's like the biggest thing that we want to make sure we accommodate. Like if we have like groups of users within the free community that are like using it for work together consecutively and doing a lot of repetitive actions that are obviously disproportionately causing us to make that investment. And that's what we're focused on right now. We're not focused on like the small 3-person team. It's really like the 20-person team that's using like the whole ecosystem and really stretching our capacity to scale, like we need some sort of monetary compensation for that so we can continue to provide a really robust product. And that being said, like it's not just what they have right now. There's a whole slew of additional features that they would be accessing as well by becoming an enterprise customer, right? Like we do onboarding, we have bespoke assets that you can import into your environment and or have within the landing pad environment. You have a Teams feature where you can set up teams within there. So the ways that they're using the free product are actually kind of haphazardly using it, and we can't even guarantee the robustness of like these use cases. So that's probably more the bigger focus here is like, we have identified through the data that there's like a ton of use cases that are business use, what we would deem business use cases, and those are the use cases we want to get to the bottom of. And like, honestly, it would make me super happy if there were a lot of those use cases were also community use cases. And I'm like, whoa, okay, community is using it in a totally different way as we would imagine businesses to use it. But when we've identified through emails and we've identified through user behavior that these are definitely like larger organizations that are they're using this for production work. And it will help us actually provide more to everyone if we were able to find a way to enter a business relationship with them. But at the current rate, I'll just be honest, at the current rate, we can't do both. We can't support those use cases, our enterprise customers, and the broader individuals like yourselves who are literally just using it as part of their creative workflow.
And if I could add, like, one thing I think it's holding me to push for the company I work on a full time is like I would need some tools, especially like for low poly modeling. It is very focused on design, Gravity Sketch, and I wish it was that there was. I mean, you guys are so close to be a perfect low poly modeling app, and that would make my life so much easier at work. So if you guys could consider that, then I could try to make a push in my company, like the company I work for, if they could implement that in our pipeline. But right now I can only use the Gravity Sketch for my personal, like for sculpting miniatures and stuff like this, and not on my day-to-day job. So I cannot like push for an enterprise in our company. But if there was a tool that I could actually use for my day-to-day job, I could totally do it. So
yeah, that's actually super helpful. Like, I would love for this conversation to turn into that. Like, what are the key things that you would need to bring this into work and have conviction to promote this at work and say, hey, we should be paying this company to use it. I mean, ultimately, it would turn the product into a better product for your personal work, I imagine, as well, if we were to fix some of the things that would help you at work, right? If we can just stay on that topic for a second, what are like maybe the top 3 things that would make this a powerhouse to use at work?
for me, would be like first
yeah.
drop. Oh, sorry. Someone want to say first?
No. I said for you for sure.
Yeah.
I thought I misinterpreted. Yeah.
For me, would be like to be able to work like as a poly modeling and not just like subdivision modeling. Because right now, it's like when you're trying to do, sometimes you select the whole loop, and it's like because I work for mobile games, and we have like to be very constant on the poly count. I did a lot of requests on the feature requests. I would love to have like a poly count information visible while I'm working on models, things like this that would speed up my UVs. It's like a giant thing for me. Would be able like to unwrap my UVs models in there, so I could actually just because it's so much faster to model like selecting a face and you can move and rotate. Like VR is amazing for that. And it's like you guys are so close. If you could just push a little bit further, I could try to convince like at least for our team to implement for our pipeline. Would be amazing.
That's good. That's cool. Yeah, this is great. These are great insights. And I hope we can pull more of these insights out because we're actually trying to create 2 pricing tiers for enterprise. One that is like easier for them to get involved with without making an annual commitment, and one that is more annual based like what we currently have. So if we were able to, through this exercise that we're doing now, where we're kind of putting a few more restrictions in place, if we're able to stimulate a bit more of these types of conversations, like, hey, look, now you're in the pricing range that makes sense for my company. If this and this and this were made, I can easily see us bringing this into the organization. Like, you guys teach us how to, obviously, how to like talk to your businesses for those of you that are using the personal and the product for personal use and for business use. Helpful. Thank you.
Hey guys, I just had a quick question. I was wondering why we can't get a little more transparency behind like the pricing models. Um, for me, it's like I'm trying to figure out, and I've been using Gravity Sketch since 2019. Um, it's been like a great tool for me to be able to use, and I've been able to successfully get some of the companies that I've worked with to like purchase an enterprise software version, and it's shown to be super helpful. But I'm usually the only person who knows how to use it. So getting, because I work in like the aerospace industry, there's not a lot of people who are super willing to bring this into their workflow as like an engineer. Like our design teams are super small. In most cases, it's really just me. So I end up doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the design work. But um, you know, moving forward, I'm trying to think like how can I monetize this skill set as like somebody who's like gotten pretty good at Gravity Sketch. I think it is a super powerful tool, and the idea of like maybe branching out and doing my own kind of consulting and having Gravity Sketch as a tool that I use, because I think you're exactly right that it's a great communicator, right? More than anything, you can be on a call with somebody and cast your screen and get to the design really fast, where everybody's on board. But I have to like in thinking about this, I have to weigh that cost consideration with like every other software program that I have to have. Like I've got to have the Adobe suite. I've got to have some kind of CAD program, like whether that's SolidWorks or Fusion or NX or CATIA, like all of those software programs I'm already like having to consider. And it's really difficult to weigh Gravity Sketch in the mix when like I'm Fusion 360 has like gotten really far in like their own capabilities, and it's they just up their prices to 600, from 300 and something to 600 and something a year, and
Right.
that's a hard pill to swallow. But I know that I'm getting like some really good manufacturing capabilities with that. I'm getting like there's a lot of benefits that I get for real world application, and that translation of what I get out of Gravity Sketch is not like it does have value, right? It's super helpful, but it's if I had to choose between the two of them, right? If I had to choose Gravity Sketch or Fusion or some kind of CAD modeling software, I would have to choose the CAD modeling software because that's the only thing that I can send to a CNC machine, or the only thing I can have directly like used for a physical application, or like just to communicate with an engineering team. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is, for people like me who are trying to imagine what the future could be and try to think of like how can I leverage this tool, better transparency, and how I can bring Gravity Sketch into my workflow and budget appropriately for it would be super helpful.
What do you do, Gabe? What's your background?
I work for Sierra Space. I'm the
Okay.
senior
Oh, yeah, of
industrial
course.
designer and space architect for them. If you look up the Leidos lunar rover, I designed the lunar rover. It's been to like NASCAR races and stuff, and that whole vehicle was designed in Gravity Sketch. Like I worked for a company called Dynetics, and I got them on board to buy the enterprise version, and it was fantastic, and it was super cool to design a vehicle and then have it built like for the moon in Gravity Sketch,
Crazy.
like being able to bring in mannequins and spacesuit, like rigged spacesuits, and pose them around the rover and figure out like kind of do a first pass of human factors of like, can I accommodate the first and 99th percentile? That would be, I mean, and that would be a feature. I know I've mentioned it before, but like a feature that accommodates some of like the human factor side of it would be super helpful. Knowing like if we have the first and 99th percentile mannequins, that'd be great. Because right now what I'm doing is I kind of like I make a cube and I stretch it to the size that I need it about to be, and I measure that with the measuring tool, and then I bring in a mannequin, and then I scale the mannequin to whatever size I need it to be, and then I use that. But yeah, being able to choose, those kinds of parameters before you bring the mannequin in would be super helpful. and would honestly be it'd be a huge way to advocate for it in these harder engineering worlds where I can say with confidence, like, because that's the first question I always get when I show somebody a model with a mannequin in is, oh well, what percentile is that mannequin? And yeah, having that data on hand would be super helpful.
I mean, you said a lot. You said a lot there, Gabe. First thing I want to say is like, thank you so much for support. Like, honestly, bringing it in is a hard thing. I've talked to so many designers that have brought it into their companies and just so much friction. They fought through it. So honestly, I can't thank you enough for that. Without folks like you, we definitely wouldn't be where we're at. On the pricing side, you're absolutely right. How do we price it so that we can service a wider spectrum of use cases like yours? At the moment, what we found is that we don't have to grow the team too big or the company too big to support enterprise use cases, because the kind of the licensing and the terms that we sign with them put, you know, us in a pretty decent place to charge enough to offset any like significant costs, and like also the financial risk that we do that we take with hosting and facilitating their data, their IP. But with consultancies, obviously we want to offer as much security as possible, same level, but we obviously wouldn't be signing any really strict terms and conditions around certain things that we have to do with like larger organizations. And so, you know, this is us out loud thinking and kind of internal discussions that have been had around, is there a consumption model that could work, right? And that model, it's more like you guys are using it for a project. That project obviously spins up and spins down. Or for the gaming industry and the entertainment industry, same thing, right? Like you go onto a job site, you spin it up, you spin it down, and while you're paying the annual contract for all your other software tools that you use, potentially here is like there's something that we can work out which works on a, you know, on a more like when I use it for project work versus when I use it for personal work kind of thing. So that's something we're definitely taking into consideration, but trying to keep the team size low, we're trying to provide as much value in the free product so that, you know, you can use that unrestricted in those use cases for the time being until we find something that kind of meets you halfway there. And then you hit like on something that's like so near and dear to me for the past 3 years, which is the mannequin needs it needs a rework. And like, honest to God, I would love to have so many features in the mannequin that allow you to do all the different percentiles. You can even hyperextend joints, set preset poses, all that stuff. Even save your own mannequin and the way that you posed it and stretched it and manipulated it, levels of detail, all that stuff. So I'm like super in love with the mannequin, and I wish we can get to that. This is the only guy that can do it, and he's like underwater with a bunch of other work now. So we either need to coach someone up internally to do it, or we really need to like put a couple other things on the back burner. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on, you know, some sort of flex model? So that's kind of internally what we've been talking about, is like coming up with a flex model that can service that big tier.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last time that like when, you know, we did, I think, have a conversation with somebody about getting pricing for work at Zero Space, and I think it was like 10 grand or something, and it was just like, I'm the only person here who uses it. That's a huge chunk to just to be able to accommodate, right? And not knowing what any other pricing options are, it kind of just leaves me thinking like, well, I guess the software just costs 10 grand, right? Like it would be great to just know a little bit or options on the website and just be able to like build your, as I'm like trying to think of like, how can I, like I said, how could I maybe like do some consulting or something and building that case, you know, on my end, but not having enough information, it just gets like a little discouraging to be like, oh man, like I can't afford like a $10,000 investment up front to integrate this into my workflow. And I know you guys try to work with businesses individually and stuff like that, and I really appreciate that, and that, like, you know, you're trying to look out for the early adopters and people who are generating content. Like I've got a whole Instagram page where I just post stuff that I do in Gravity Sketch, just because it's fun. I enjoy it. I try to participate in the competitions and just like get the word out, because I do love the program. I think it's great, and I want you guys to get paid, right? Like I want you guys to be profitable. I just I don't I needed to somehow be within the price range that I can contribute. So like I don't know, like even I don't know, like Unreal has a thing where you can download Unreal for free and use it as much as you want, and then when you sell your game, they get like a certain percentage of the game. So like I don't know, I know there's lots of different versions out there. Like what you were saying, like a usage model, like that could work. Something where it's like I don't know, you have a certain cost for how many different projects you can have open, or how many different sketches you could save, or I feel like that would be like number of sketches to me would be more value. Like that would be a better price point than exports, right? Because like
Right.
if I go into a sketch, like I just did a silly little side project. I made like a tower thing that looked like a street lamp or whatever, and I finished it. I brought it into Blender to like, try to make it pretty. And I realized after I brought it into Blender that like I missed a couple of vertices over here and there or something, and I had to go back. And I went through like 3 or 4 exports in an hour just to like just to get it right. And that would be like if you make it so that like I can only get 3 or 4 a month, that would just be a bummer, because I wouldn't be able to even do like my personal promotion of it, right? Like to do that. So I don't know, like if I was limited on the number of sketches I could save at a time, it at least would force me to like I could only like have like maybe 3 projects going at a time. I couldn't have multiple versions and like an unlimited number of sketches, but I could at least continue to work on these projects that are like personal to me and try to get them better and be able to promote them. But yeah, I don't know. It's just an idea.
No, that's a cool idea. I mean, I've seen that on several iPad apps as well, where you can only have like a few canvases and then you have to pay for the additional canvases. I guess where you're catching us, Gabe, is like we're at this like inflection point as a business where like we're not quite at Unreal or Adobe yet. We're trying to get there. Not quite there. We're not quite there yet. We're trying to go from like where we are now is like a kind of small 80+ person team to a company that can facilitate the whole spread of different creative disciplines. And the best way to like provide the free product is to charge like larger organizations, not consultancies, but like big organizations, and that cost offsets our cost and commitment to the community. And so like over time, I think we're gonna be building in those levels, probably tearing down from the high price point that you were quoted, which was like for an enterprise team of a company that's generating like $500 million or more in revenue every year and using this as like a driving tool for their workflow. But I think what I would love to chat through is like, what can we offer today that like allows you to still use the free product to get that value that you're getting right now, even if you're using it for consulting work. Like you as an individual going in and using it for consulting work, that's great. Once that organization that you're consulting with, like these aerospace companies bought into it, then I'm happy to have that enterprise conversation with them. But like I don't want to block that use case, because I think that is the gold that actually gets Gravity Sketch to the next level, right? Is like individual like you bringing it to work, using it, showing the organization how it's used. In fact, we got 2 customers that way, where like an individual was like highly skilled consulting with a bunch of different companies, brought it in. The company was like, holy crap, what is this thing? And they were perfectly comfortable to pay the price point because of all the IT security and restrictions that they needed us to comply to. So we kind of built this like really enterprise ready product here from like the back end perspective, but we have these use cases that don't necessarily need as much. And so trying to close that gap and stay flexible and agile as a team is like where we're currently at. That's like the stage of growth that we're at right now.
Yeah, I guess the way I've really had the most success is just sharing, like having it pulled up on my computer and then sharing the screen and like just going through the process with people, and me being the primary user and having somebody say like, yes, this is right, no, this isn't, and just getting that feedback, instead of pulling people into a room. And I've tried pulling people into a room, and what ends up happening is people just kind of get like they just get, I don't know, they get like kind of not overwhelmed, but just like, ooh, I can do this and I get this, and then they just get distracted, and you're trying to have a design conversation with them, and they're more like enamored with the experience at first than they are with like trying to do anything. And it can have like two effects. One, it can have an effect that like they're super excited to learn more, which is I find to be the more rare reaction. And the other one is that they're kind of overwhelmed with the options and what to do, and the controls and things like that, because they're not familiar with VR.
Right.
Not anything. I don't think there's like anything wrong with like the controls or anything like that. I think they're intuitive and they're great. I miss the tool belt, but that's okay.
Everyone misses a tool belt.
It was like a fun little like sachet to like pull your stuff out, you know.
Yeah. We'll have to bring that back in another iteration.
But yeah, so that's really that's the workflow for me. And then just being able to bring the model down and pull it into Keyshot and be able to go through those iterations. Keyshot or Blender. I use I use Blender for my personal stuff usually, and then Keyshot for stuff at work. Yeah, I don't know if you guys are able to integrate any better with Blender, just because that's like I know a lot of people who use Gravity Sketch also use Blender because it's a free software. There's a lot of back and forth there, and that would I don't know if there's a way to make that integration a little more seamless. I also don't know if that helps your business case either. Like just helping people use more free software. I don't know if that's helpful, but.
I mean, honestly, for creation, we're not really trying to charge. So if you're just using it for a sole creation experience, we should try to make it as seamless as possible. I mean, we're going to really generate revenue when like it's teamwork and sharing and, using our cloud services. Like that is the model, because like if we're just licensed model for accessing the creation tools, I don't think we really have an opportunity to truly disrupt the industry. I think we have like an opportunity to offer like an amazing new tool, but not necessarily disrupt how people work. Like the big vision is like you're sketching something early stage and you can bring anyone in at any time to review that and collaborate and like get to a clear, concise like set of instructions for the next phase of design versus like waiting until you have this thing as a clay model and someone saying, hey, actually this is off, and going back to the drawing board. So that's kind of the level of like disruption we want to have in the industry, and that's probably where we'll find the best like revenue case for us. So integrating with Blender is smart because it is the future tool for a lot of like the young designers are using it because absolutely, it's a free software, and I think it's best for us to play in that arena as well. If you're using it for creation individually, it's free. The second you want to bring it into work and like start scaling it using cloud services, then like you're paying, and that's similar to Blender's model, right? Like when you start to need Blender support, that's when like they have like the consultative fees that they would layer on top. So we're very much inspired by them as well.
Yeah,
and I think integrating to them, like with them, we did do some stuff recently on the sub D creasing, so that should be coming out pretty soon. But yeah, we just need more voices about like how stuff is coming into Blender, it's coming in wrong, how it should be coming in, what options you need. Like a lot of that stuff, we can add toggles or whatever to export. I know it's a pretty clunky experience now, but we'll probably migrate some of that to the cloud as well, and we can just try to make a really smooth experience where you have a bit more control over how the data comes out, and then maybe in the future you have like a Blender profile that's set up for your specific needs.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. That sounds great.
Yeah, that's the direction at the moment.
If you guys could integrate with Unity itself, it would be awesome. If I could just use the sketch inside Unity with Gravity Sketch in our project as a editor tool, that would be super helpful.
Yeah. Why our OBJ works pretty well, but like I guess you'd have to have Unity license of Unity. We'd have to have some sort of Unity plugin, right? To like.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a few challenges there. Probably the biggest one is just like releasing all of our source code. Isn't a lot of fun for us. And for it to be an editor tool, it would mean it was all basically there on display in the packages or something like that. but definitely just making a really, I don't know if anyone's actually using Unity's like VR editor these days, like, because sketching and Gravity Sketch are in VR. I don't know if people are actually editing scenes in VR. It was something Unity tried to do for a while. But like, because Gravity Sketch is built in Unity, there should at least be a very easy way to get a file between that looks exactly the same in this kind of stuff. And there might be some configurations that get close, but yeah, like
Actually,
I
I
think
wrote on the chat there because I don't know if you guys know this program called Naomi. Is a animation program, and they actually use Unity where you rig your character and you import your model rigged through a Unity package. If I could rig and bring a rigged model to Gravity Sketch, it would be awesome.
You can bring a rig model in, but I think it's not very well documented. So offer anyone that wants to create like a few mannequins for us, I can release or I can post the mannequin that we have, the mesh that we have for our updated mannequin, and anyone wants to like rig it and scale it to different sizes, we can put those in the asset library. I know it's like a bit of a community sourced one, and like it's a halfway step to getting where we want to get to the mannequin, but I'm happy to share all the assets that we have now for the mannequin. Not the current mannequin. The current mannequin is like there's some proportions that are off. So we've created a new mannequin that's more atomically correct, or anatomically correct, as well as a woman and a child. So if anyone wants to use that and rig it, I can give them to Dan. Dan can post them, and yeah, anyone wants to like try to have a crack at it, be great.
How
I did
about
notice there's a new mannequin in the asset folder. It's
Yeah,
got kind of a weird hip.
yeah.
It's got a real. It's got a fatty.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's us trying to rig and design. We need a pro. We need a pro. It's been very hard to find someone to do like a humanoid mannequin for us that's segmented. I'll share it. I'll share it so you guys, anyone can edit it. But yeah, we just need someone to work on it with us.
One issue I have run into with trying to get from Gravity Sketch to Unity is though, like when you have faces that are the wrong way. I don't know if there's a way to edit that in Gravity Sketch. But what I've had to do in the past is go from Gravity Sketch to Blender, then to Unity to like fix those faces that were the wrong orientation.
Yeah.
If you had that natively in Gravity Sketch, that would be helpful, and just smooth that transition out, just to check to see if all the faces are the right way.
We do have a flip face tool, but it's like now it's at the export menu. So you have to go through the export menu and then you'll get the tool. There's been a huge push to bring it back to the main app, where you can like select it out of the tool belt and it just flips the face for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you go to the export menu today and just
press the tool button.
and then push the tool belt button, like now it's not a belt anymore, obviously it's like a tool shelf. Push that button, you'll see that there's like a little button that looks like a little wand with a little ball at the end of it. And then yeah, a little probe, and then you can like touch surfaces and it will flip them around. And then just hit exit. Just exit out of the export, and then you'll have your surfaces the way you want it without exporting the file.
Oh, excellent. Well, thanks. Good to know. Didn't know that.
Yeah, we haven't promoted it very well. We need to do a better job at communicating that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of I'm sometimes surprised like the features that I discovered because I just didn't use them, that are baked into Gravity Sketch. When I have watched quite a few videos on tutorials how to use Gravity Sketch, and just some of the features that are in that I've just never used, and I'm just surprised sometimes. Like when I find something, I'm like, well, what's the difference between this and this? And it almost feels like sometimes there's redundant features inside of like the menus, like in the line tools and the ink tools, and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess sometimes I'm just curious, like why some of those things are redundant. Is there something I'm missing? Is there like somebody's workflow was very niche and was like, this is really important, and that's how it got there, and I'm just not seeing that being used very much. I don't know. I guess I haven't checked out the education part the education tab in a while, and maybe you guys have updated it since then. But I just haven't found a lot of resources for doing some of using some of these features, why they exist, why it's different from something else. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a combination. There's the second point that you mentioned is correct. Like there are some niche use cases that we accommodated because we could, and it was like easy for us to do it. But it compounded on the second point that you were trying to understand, which is like, should we add this to this tool, or should we merge these two tools, or should we include the design? Like right now, there's no difference between technically there's no difference between a stroke and ink, but we have these split out. Whereas like these are actually the same exact thing. And since we add brush profiles, there's no reason why we couldn't bring all that together in one concise UI. And so like you're literally just using strokes, but you have constant thickness or tapered or flat or so forth, and all the different modes like projection mode, point mode, and all that stuff. So that was just like we were trying to get clever in the back in the day, or we tried to add features to the ink or the stroke, or even the volume, for example, it still uses the same base stroke underneath it all. So we could easily convert strokes to volume. So there's some hygiene that needs to happen at the design level of the UI to kind of clear up some of that stuff. And then there are some stuff that's just like NURBS. We want to support NURBS, but sub D obviously is so much more accessible to everyone right now. And like, a long-term aspiration would be like, could we make NURBS feel really great and easy and smooth to use? Because we know that downstream workflows in industrial design need to have NURBS. And so like, we have two different surface modes where one is like a NURBS-based surface and one's a sub D-based surface. So that does feel redundant, but at some point we could start adding more to that feature set and then become more prevalent as to what these two are. And then I think there's also a language thing, which we haven't really cracked, which is like, how do we call these things? Really simple, but also give it enough depth that people that are very in the know around 3D, like yourselves, could like also understand what you're getting out of it.
Is there a plan to add animation to Gravity Sketch? Because that's something that the Shapes XR has this slide things, and that is actually very useful. At least like if you have to present a design and then you can have like different states of it. Right now you can do with layers, but it's kind of not very optimized.
I mean, I'd love to add it. Again, like we're hyper focused so that we can like survive the multiple VR winters that we've been through. I mean, all of you guys know this, right? Like the hype around VR goes up and down every year and or every couple years or so. And by staying like extremely focused on just like the current pain points in the industry, which are, getting the idea from the designer in its truest form out in 3D, we've been able to like at least weather a lot of those winters. And so at some point, like when this does become like the tool of choice for a large portion of designers, or like when you join a company, there's like, here's your VR headset and here's your iPad with a pencil. I think then we start to open up the aperture a little bit on use cases and also feature sets. So, before animation, I would say there's plenty of other things I'd love to get in there, like Bezier curves, for example, which helps us get closer to like Illustrator or people that use Illustrator, or even things like voxel, for example, might be super helpful aside from, going into the animation angle. But what could have a really good effect is like better importing of rig geometry, as well as like camera paths and things like this. I think that could also contribute to like all the industries at once. Yeah, long answer, but I would love to get it in. I just think from a priority perspective, we're trying to focus in on like what we can solve the most pain right now. And the most pain right now is still around like authoring and communicating what you've authored to someone else. So, creation and communication of that creation. But animation is a powerful communication tool. So how to figure out where that sits in our journey is really important. If you guys watch the conversation we had at around our annual like design festival, I showed the diagram of like the T shape where we can go really broad on communication and really deep on creation. Like animation is one of those ones that almost kind of like sits between the top of the T and the leg of the T, and where we prioritize that on the timeline is something that we still have to kind of unpack. And I'd love to unpack it with you guys. Like, give me more use cases, share more on Discord about how you would use animation feature. What is like the bare minimum functionality that would be needed in order to effectively communicate your design or your work to someone downstream. And then we can like sit back and look at like, how do we approach that the Gravity Sketch way? So everyone that's actually done like a lot of different feature comparisons between different softwares, we don't take any offense to that. Actually, it like helps us really understand where we need to like improve and level up. So I'd welcome that as well, because the way I'm looking at it right now could be completely different than the way you're looking at it. And if you frame it like, I guess in a concise way through some visuals and maybe other softwares that we need to go and check out, I think that gives us more conviction on like where we place that in the roadmap.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
mentioned like a Blender as a reference. Like one point, Blender did this Code Quest, which is like they proposed a lot of changes to get money. If you guys had something like this, like proposed, like I want to do this tool, I would happily throw money at you guys and pay for a feature. It's like just not like block features, but like propose I would like to upgrade the program in this direction, and we need money. I would pay for it, of course.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, definitely one of the big things, we have Deho, our VP of operations, who's kind of sitting in the product seat at the moment. And he's been doing like a really deep dive into customer and community needs. He's actually really enjoying the product space. But one of the things he proposed was maybe going public with a roadmap, or at least some form of roadmap. And then we can, Dan proposed maybe even upvoting on things in the roadmap. And then we can kind of like have that discourse there. And there are probably going to be things, especially publicly, that don't make logical sense for us and we'll need more color to. But like, again, we could say, hey, this is a risk for us. Maybe we should source not just money, because I think money is one aspect, but I think talent is another aspect. So, who are the right people that we need to be working with in order to bring this to life?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys can hear me well, but we're really keen to have these like conversations with you guys and the broader community on a more regular basis. I think we get a lot of inspiration from how you guys are using the product, often in ways that when we were building it, maybe we didn't even think about, right? So it's really valuable for us to kind of like hear about all those different use cases and your needs. So maybe like, I don't know, on a quarterly basis or something, we can come talk a little bit about how we're thinking about the quarter ahead from a product perspective. Eventually would love to get something where, there's kind of like a feature requests and upvote kind of system like out in the public as well. And so for like the more popular ones, maybe we can talk through those. Maybe we're working on some of them, maybe some of them not yet. And so we can kind of talk to you about like how we're thinking about that, just to get like the discussion and dialogue going a little bit more. I think that'd be really great.
Sure.
Question from my side would be, what do you guys think of that idea of a more regular dialogue from Gravity Sketch to community, and what would you guys look for from your end from that dialogue? If we did more of these sessions, more AMAs, what would you guys imagine that time to look like?
For me, this time is perfect. I would imagine something like this, like exactly this kind of AMA. If you had like from time to time, once a month or once every quarter, that would be amazing. Just to also to give feedback, like what I would like, what I see missing in my industry, and can give feedback, because you guys cannot work in all the industries. So maybe there is like some small tweak you can do that would totally open a huge opportunity for us. And for example, for games, I wouldn't need the busy spline, right? It's like for me it would be much more useful some vertex editing and something that I can easily throw to Blender and export the game. But I can totally understand, like for other industries, it makes a total sense, and then you guys have to prioritize. But at least know like what's going on behind the curtains helps a lot. Also, like to me to judge like my investment down the line.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think another thing that we can bring more transparency to is just like the size of business that we're at and like kind of our core focus for the quarter. Because like right now we're definitely like leaning in pretty heavy into a couple of verticals, which is like transportation as a wider theme, as well as footwear, footwear and apparel design, actually, like sportswear. So like, you know, the footwear companies all have apparel brands, and they use Illustrator exclusively. And so focusing on, you know, making our spline tech compatible with Bezier manipulation really helps lower the cognitive load on those creators that are learning how to get their first steps into 3D. And it also doesn't deprecate anything on the side of the creators like yourselves. If anything, maybe now you have a new way to manipulate and keep tangencies, right? Because now you don't have to worry about the NURBS points and trying to figure out the tangency. You can kind of use it. So, you know, like hopefully that creative tool compounds. And if we were talking about that earlier, you kind of understand the logic and where we're going with the product. That being said, I do think there are some kind of holy grail areas for us to get into. And like, just so you guys know where my business mind is thinking on the roadmap. And I feel like the two areas that are like really amazing for us would be entertainment. That includes gaming and, you know, obviously the cinema industry. And there's tons of stuff that needs to be done there, especially like everything you pointed at, UVs, like better understanding of the mesh count and so forth. And then I think the architecture space is really interesting as well. Like big, huge proposals that you're making of you know, infrastructure change that you can't really clearly visualize in any other form than this is before actually constructing it is like incredible. But those are like really hard from a business model perspective to understand how to like target it, focus it, pitch it, especially with gaming entertainment. It seems like it's a lot of contractors, and it kind of like you spin up and spin down based on the success of the film or the game. And then in architecture, it's like bid based. So it depends on like if you get a project, and like those projects sometimes go 10, 12 years. So like when do you need it, when do you not need it? So like those are like small considerations I'm trying to work through. And then like the community, you guys have actually brought us some like pretty interesting use cases like medical. I didn't even expect this, but we see a lot of people like importing like CT scans or MRI scans, and then like using those to like plan something or, you know, figure out how they're going to do a certain kind of non-invasive surgery or something. I think this is like blew my mind. So the more discussion that we can have, probably the more we can see where the Venn diagram has overlaps between the industries like yourselves and the ones that we're focusing on from a business perspective.
I just did want to, because we're almost at time, but I don't want to. I mean, it's a great conversation, and I think we could probably go on forever. But I do want to make sure that we've opened the floor to as many kind of questions as we possibly can. So Brett, perfect, you got your hand up. Yeah, let's run through any few final questions, and we'll stay on as long as needed.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, cool. Yeah, I haven't used Gravity Sketch for a year or two actually. I'm trying to dive back into it. I've been doing a lot with AI, and just trying to get started as a consultant designer. But I just had one thought about the pricing. I've always wondered why can't you have something similar to, say, you know, my Adobe Creative Suite or Photoshop subscription? It's about £100 a year or something. I know that at that price level, you might be worried about what do you offer, or how do you support a lot of users. But I was wondering, could you do something like, you know, $100 a year buys you access to, say, a weekly collab where you can hit time. So it's not just a casual. I think you tried to experiment with that before, so a weekly kind of meetup, but actually where you can go in and say, okay, I want 1 hour or half an hour support of how to do something, or bug fixing, maybe the different categories. So you know, like, there's a limited amount of hours you're going to have to support people, and people can decide, hey, that's worth it for me to be on that level. Maybe you get other features, but I think maybe it's just something like that, just a very finely tuned support feature, type of support. But I guess people you know, a bit more connected, so people feel that they can get more help directly. Maybe there's something there. I don't know how many people you have at that sort of, like, that would be like a pro user that's even just a hobbyist who wants to pay for that level of access.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. Like almost paying for any kind of like hours of consulting or something like that, where you can come in and work with you directly in a lab space.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's on a project to get something done or just to learn things, for people who are just pure hobbyists who decide they want to pay $100 a year, maybe to be in a sort of like a club too. Maybe it's like, the collab sessions are part of being in the club. I think you've got enough fans that would be interested in being part of the Gravity Sketch sort of pro club. That I think you could find, things to offer.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like almost like Patreon kind of thing, right? Like supporting the cause. Yeah, we talked about that internally actually. Like the early adopters, we just wanted to give them that status ASAP, but maybe there is like maybe maybe it's like extended adopters or something like that. Not early adopters, but early adopters keep their badge and then you can kind of go into like more of like continued support.
I'm not even don't know how much I paid in the early days, but I was ultimately adopted and I've got that status. But I think it's also for people who weren't in that set of people who just want to, there's people who are prepared to pay $100 a year for just if they're a fan, if they're like a non-pro user.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We haven't really cultivated that side of it yet.
I don't know if the numbers make sense for you, but I think if you just were clever with what you give them.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. Thanks for that. Thanks, Brett.
I concur with the Patreon comment. I think it'd be super fun to have like, I don't know, some kind of thing where you are certified pro user Gravity Sketch super supporter type. I don't know, something I could put on my Instagram that's like, hey, I'm like an advanced user of this program, or I don't know, something like that. I know there's like I've seen around like the Gravity Sketch like Academy or something like that.
Yeah, the certifications.
Yeah, certifications. But I guess that's not quite what I'm thinking of. Something more like, I don't know, like I'm more part of a community, more than I've just paid to get a certificate.
Right.
And then I had one other question, which is like, I actually was thinking about, you mentioned entertainment, and I've been really exploring like the VFX community lately and like looking at storyboarding and all these people and all this different stuff. And I had this idea that like, what if, would it be possible to test that with like a filmmaker and be like, could I do like a storyboard with a filmmaker just to see how it would go? And I could set up camera angles, I could do all the shots. I hadn't quite figured out how to get into the space yet, or to do something like that. But I was curious if you're actively, like, if you have programs in place to explore these other avenues that you're talking about. Like, do you have people going out there saying like, hey, can I try something with you? Like, I just want to try out if I could storyboard your movie with you with this program, and just to kind of like see how it goes. Like, are you funding like R&D, exploratory stuff like that?
Yeah, like the first thing that jumped to my mind is we do some customer matchmaking sometimes where we'll matchmake automotive with footwear, and like it's really cool to see them kind of gel and like come up with different ways of working. And maybe we can even extend that to the community at some point where like here's someone from this discipline and someone from this discipline, they can kind of get in and really kind of play around with ideas and work through that. Like, yeah, we definitely don't tap. I don't think we tap you guys enough. So this is a really good. That's a really good insight.
Gabe, that's something I would love to. Well, both points that you mentioned there, I'd love to pick up with you. Maybe we jump on a call. At some point, I'd love to pick your brains on what you think certification looks like, how that could look different than what's currently done with students, but also the matchmaking side of things. So, but yeah,
Good.
yeah. So I think we're now kind of rounding off about at time. But was this valuable to you guys? Is this a good session for you guys? Perfect. Well, as we said, we'd love to do this again in the coming months. We'll keep these sessions going. We want to keep that dialogue as open as we possibly can, and maybe circle back to what I said at the start of the call as well, and say I want to encourage this conversation especially when you see communication or things around how we're changing our product, we'd love to keep that dialogue open. So please don't feel shy to DM at any point. We'd love to discuss it, and then of course we'll hold these sessions too. But with that, I think might be a good point to round off. What do we think?
Yeah. Thank you all. Really appreciate it. Obviously, big changes to the product are coming. Hopefully, they won't hit you as hard as they do. If they do hit you, please feel free to reach out via support. And especially you early adopters, individual users, you should not be impacted by it. But if anything happens and you are, ping us directly, and we're going to try to support you as best we can. But again, this is an initiative just so we can level set with the businesses that are using our free product and continue to grow and support our individual users. Thank you all. Appreciate the input.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Take care.